Hello there, my RPG lovers, and welcome to another video. Gothic Remake has been pretty successful with simulating the original Gothic experience, and a lot more than that actually.
Well, I can't argue with that.
A ton of new players played a Gothic-like game for the first time ever and got to see what makes this franchise so beloved. The remake is a great entry point into the series, and if all of the rumors are true, it's just the beginning. It seems like we are going to get at least one more remake and maybe even more additional content for Gothic 1 Remake. I made a couple of videos about this topic, so you can check out those videos if you missed them. If you already completed a playthrough of 2 of Gothic Remake and you want to experience something similar to this game, you came to the right place.
You not listening? Someone spit in your ear?
If Gothic 1 Remake was your first introduction to this series, I actually envy you, because you get to explore the world of Gothic-like RPGs for the first time. Don't worry though, this is not like another Souls-like situation where you have God knows how many games in this subgenre. It's hard to even call a Gothic-like subgenre of RPGs, even though we have around 15 games that could be described like this. The definition of a Gothic-like game is a little bit blurry, but they all have some recognizable features, like zero-to-hero character progression, where you play as a nobody, a very hostile but a living and breathing open world that treats you as just another NPC rather than a hero, a somewhat grounded fantasy setting, and so on. The reason why I decided to talk about these 3 games in particular is because I personally think they have the strongest Gothic-like features, similar to what you got to experience in the Gothic 1 Remake.
Let me guess. It isn't enough?
So I wanted to make this video and help you decide what you could play next if you couldn't get enough of Gothic 1 Remake. All 3 games that we're going to talk about in this video have very strong Gothic-like features that you'll be able to recognize from the very beginning. They are far from being perfect, and some of their problems might even discourage you from trying them out. But I'm going to lay out all of their strengths and weaknesses in a digestible video format and help you find at least one game that you might really enjoy if you loved Gothic Remake. Right after I tell you about the sponsor of this video. Once Human is a free-to-play post-apocalyptic multiplayer survival game that released on PC in 2024. Nearly 2 years after the PC release, the game is officially coming out on consoles. August 25th is the official console release for Once Human on PlayStation and Xbox consoles. Console players are basically getting 300 plus hours of free content from day one. In the last couple of years, Once Human got constant updates through multiple scenarios that you can choose to play, a lot of seasonal updates, monster survival systems, and so on. Meaning that console players are now getting a much deeper world to jump in from the very beginning on August 25th. Check out the link in the video description for pre-ordering exclusive console starter pack to secure launch rewards and jumpstart your survival journey in Once Human. Even though Once Human is a free-to-play game, it's entirely without any pay-to-win barriers, so you don't have to worry about that if you're a new console player. Check out Once Human by clicking the link in the video description. You can pre-order the exclusive console starter pack to secure launch rewards and jumpstart your survival journey in Once Human. Huge thanks to Once Human for reaching out to the channel and sponsoring the video once again. At number 3 we have Elex 1. Elex came out in 2017 and it was developed by Piranha Bytes, the original studio behind Gothic, Risen and Elex series. Here's a fun fact for you, Elex is one of the first games I ever featured on this channel, believe it or not. I've made some guides and silly videos about it, and I revisited the game with a long review not so long ago. Elex had many flaws, but it is also a very unique RPG, especially when it comes to its setting.
What are you doing here? I'm waiting on your mom.
It seamlessly mixed fantasy, sci-fi, and post-apocalyptic elements with its story and the gameplay. Meaning that you can run around with a giant medieval melee weapon with a bow, cast magic, or use laser weapons and bombs. Elex was also a very ambitious game, even for today's standards. It features a huge open world, it's a very long RPG with ton of content, and it has a strong replay value. All of that with a pretty low budget that was estimated to be under 10 million euros, although those numbers are highly speculative. You play as a guy called Jax, who is a member of one of 4 different factions in the game, 3 of which are joinable and playable, which brings back one of the flagship features of Gothic. The ability to choose between 3 factions and progress through the game with one of them. You starting as a high-ranking member of one of those factions was an interesting twist to the existing formula. That might sound totally different from Gothic, where you start as a nameless character with little to no background. And it was certainly different in a way, but it didn't take long to realize that you're playing a Gothic-like RPG. Elex offers you more than enough choices to shape Jax as a character through story and the gameplay. With the introduction of the cold system, which keeps the track of your important dialogue decisions, it adds additional depth to the outcome of the main story. Jax was almost assassinated in the beginning of the game, which made him really weak. Not only because he got injured and robbed, but because Elex was completely out of his system. Elex is actually the name of a powerful alien element in the game, which was brought with a comet that almost destroyed the world of Megalan. Those who survived started forming different factions with their own rules. Berserkers started transmuting Elex into mana, allowing them to cast powerful magic. They cultivate unique plants, which are supposed to heal the land, and they have a rule against technology. It's strictly forbidden. If you decide to join this faction, you can learn to cast powerful magic spells and use special bow abilities. I also think they have the coolest looking armor sets in the game. Speaking of which, acquiring armor sets in Gothic games has always been a huge point of progression. It opens up the possibility to explore harder areas and fight stronger monsters without getting completely destroyed. Elex is no different, and you will have to work hard to acquire new armor sets. Gothic Remake changed the armor system a little bit by expanding the options you have with all the upgrades you can get. This feature is even harder in Elex because you'll need a lot more gold, or Elexit as the game calls its currency, especially when it comes to much stronger armors that you can get later on. Putting that aside, you can also decide to join other two factions, clerics or outlaws. Clerics are worshipping a god called Kalan, and they use Elex to create powerful machines and technology. They also have unique spells that you can learn if you decide to join them. You can use laser guns and different firing modes and other high-tech weapons like plasma guns. Outlaws are basically using drugs to enhance their abilities. You can create a powerful melee and range builds while using traditional guns like shotguns, for example. Outlaws reject the Berserker laws and cleric religion, and they're just doing their own thing in the desert. Alps are the fourth non-playable faction in the game, and they are basically the main bad guys. They collect all Elex for a higher purpose, and they are completely stripped of all emotions because they inject pure Elex into their bodies. So yeah, choosing a faction in this game will shape your entire playthrough in a major way, as it should in a Gothic-like RPG. All of these factions have a specific place on the world map, which is huge, by the way. More importantly, the exploration in Elex is hands down the best feature this game has to offer. I would argue that it's not your typical open world RPG map, it's much more unique compared to most other RPGs. It still manages to retain that Gothic-like feeling, even though it's not a small open world like in Gothic Remake, for example. The player has a jetpack, which added an interesting dimension to exploration. As a matter of fact, the whole map is meticulously designed around the jetpack feature. It's probably not what you would expect when you hear the word jetpack. It's not fast and you cannot fly, it's more like a big controlled jump and a floating device. It has a very limited fuel, but just enough to get you to the next ledge on the map. The map is very vertical, with unique looking biomes and a very strong visual variety. You will explore various forest areas, mountains, volcanic regions, snowy zones, and so on. It never gets boring. That being said, Elex had some glaring issues that might stop you from enjoying it altogether. If you think the beginning of the game in Gothic Remake is rough and unforgiving, it's actually a walk in the park compared to Elex. Some of the reasons for that are completely legit, because the game follows the Gothic-like philosophy for progression. Not completely though, because your combat animations and attacks are the same from the very beginning. They don't change or evolve as you progress and learn new skills. The bigger problem is the amount of jank this game had, and combined with a very rough beginning, it's a recipe for disaster. It turned a lot of people away, and for a good reason. The combat is very janky and punishing at the same time, even on easy difficulty. So when you try this game out, you might be greeted with a huge barrier to entry that's way more annoying compared to Gothic Remake, believe it or not. But I think it's definitely worth the struggle, because this game has so much to offer.
And I don't have any reasons why I should change my mind.
Elex is not my first choice for the game that you should play after you complete Gothic 1 Remake, but that's the reason why I have it on number 3. It's definitely a game to consider though. At number 2 we have Risen 1, a game that started a new age for Piranha Bytes back in 2009. They needed a new beginning after they temporarily lost the license for the Gothic IP, so they created a new one. Even so, Risen is basically a Gothic game through and through. It's much more similar to the first two Gothic games than any other game that came after it. The game is set on an island called Faranga, ruled by the ruthless Inquisitor Mendoza. You play as a nameless character who survived a shipwreck in the beginning of the game. You get to explore the island, and this time around you can join one of two different factions. The Inquisition will forcefully take you to the monastery if you encounter them on the map, and you cannot leave until you do a series of quests. Or you can join the Don's bandits in the swamp, the people who were exiled from the harbor city by the Inquisition. Speaking of harbor city, it's the only proper city on the island that you're going to explore. But getting there is not exactly that straightforward. The island is very mountainous, making the level design very vertical, which is always fun in a game like this, if done properly. And Risen does the exploration really well, even though you're stuck on a single island. It's worth pointing out that Risen had the most enjoyable dungeons out of all Gothic-like games. Exploring small caves and bigger dungeons is really fun in this game. Some of them require you to use spells or ranged weapons in order to progress, which you can do even as a non-mage character, as long as you have the spell scrolls. If you want to play as a full mage in this game, you'll have to join the Inquisition. Then you can choose to learn Crystal and Rune magic. Crystal magic is focused on offensive spells like Magic Bullet and Fireball, while Rune magic is focused on utility spells. Utility spells in this game can be really useful in general while exploring the world. Not only when it comes to dungeons, but open areas as well. If you decide to join the Inquisition, you can also play as a hybrid class by combining Rune magic with melee skills. If you join Don Esteban's camp, you get some exclusive melee combat skills, thief skills, and access to high level training for ranged weapons. However, Risen has a pretty flexible faction system, and you can do a lot of quests and content before you even join someone. You can do the majority of quests in the bandit camp without even joining them, and still decide to become a warrior of order or a mage. What has to be the best part about Risen's 1 gameplay is the melee combat system. Risen 1 has the best melee combat system out of all Gothic-like games. I mean, the bar for that is set very low, because those games were not known for an amazing combat system. It was always about the progression and how every level makes you feel noticeably stronger. But Risen managed to strike a great balance between progression and the combat system. You have to time your attacks properly at the end of attack animation for the most effective and the fastest combo. And the melee hits were very fast and snappy if your timing was on point. It was a bit stiff and janky for sure, especially when you use the step dodge mechanic, but once this combat clicks with you, it's really satisfying. Here's a hot take, I would even argue it's better than Gothic's Remake melee combats. It just feels snappier, faster, and slightly more impactful. If you decide to check this game out, I highly suggest trying a hybrid class by combining melee and crystal magic, it's really fun. Risen feels a little bit undercooked in later chapters, especially when it comes to the certain parts of the lore. Ironically, this is exactly how you could describe Gothic 1, although the remake improved some of those weak and unfinished parts of the game. Risen's last chapter was decent, but the ending was very disappointing, including the last big boss fight. And Risen's choice of faction is quite possibly the weakest compared to other Gothic-like games, but the story itself was interesting enough. Even so, it's still an amazing RPG experience. It's very easy to recommend, and you should seriously consider playing it after you beat the Gothic Remake. Check out my full retrospective review about this game if you want to learn more. Which brings us to my number 1 choice, and is the most obvious one. Gothic 2 is a direct sequel to Gothic 1, and it's one of the best RPGs ever made. It's not even a debate, okay? I think this game is far better than Gothic 1 in general, because it improved almost everything. Almost. Gothic 1, and now Gothic 1 Remake as well, has a more unique setting because of a magical prison break premise. You could even argue that the story is better in Gothic 1 in general, and I wouldn't disagree with you, but I think everything flows much better in the sequel. From the storytelling and characters to open world exploration and gameplay systems, Gothic 2 was almost like a perfect sequel. It also had an amazing expansion pack called Night of the Raven, which added a lot more content in general and changed the base game quite a bit. Not to mention an outstanding total conversion mod called the Chronicles of Mortana Arkelos, which was so good that Alchemia and THQ are considering including it as canon in the lore. The reason why a lot of Gothic Remake fans won't probably even try to touch this game is because of the looks and how the game aged, visually. The graphics didn't age all that well, especially when it comes to character models. But you can substantially improve the visuals if you decide to mod the game on the PC, and there is also an option to play the Unreal version of the game, which is like a fan-made remaster, basically. Once you decide to deal with some outdated visuals, and trust me, you should try at least, you're in for one of the best RPG experiences of your life. There is a reason why this game had great reviews and such an amazing reception, and it's not just nostalgia. I think Gothic Remake is a perfect example and proof that it wasn't just nostalgia. This game truly had something special.
Ha! You got balls, I'll give you that.
While you're waiting for the Gothic 2 remake, which will definitely come out eventually, you should also play the original, there is no doubt about it. Gothic 2 puts you in the shoes of the same nameless character from the first game, and the story continues with you and Stardust. Stardust managed to save you from the Sleeper's Temple that collapsed on your head, where you almost died. Stardust is like Diego at the start of Gothic 1, he gives you a long introduction to the game and explains everything that happened in the meantime. He erected another tower close to the city of Corinus, and he tells you about a new threat, which will be the dragons. You have to acquire the artifact called Eye of Innos from paladins in Corinus, but before that you have to prove yourself once again. The upper city of Corinus cannot be accessed until you become a citizen. You also have to join one of 3 factions and do quests for them to progress through the ranks, as you would expect in a Gothic-like game. Or an actual Gothic game in this particular case. The scale of Gothic 2 is much bigger compared to the first game, but it's not a massive open world game by today's standards. This game did something very interesting with its world map. You get the whole island of Corinus, but you also have the old map from Gothic 1 included. Gothic's 1 map within Gothic 2 is very similar, but it has some changes and limitations, and the reason for that is obviously the fall of the barrier. But the old map from Gothic 1 is only a fraction of what you're going to explore on this island. They will make you come back to this well-known place as early as chapter 2 when you're still pretty weak. And once again, this only encourages you to get stronger, and it feels amazing when you can finally fight the orcs in the penal colony. The sense of progression is even better, as well as the gameplay systems. I mean, Gothic 2 gameplay is very similar to Gothic 1, with some new features and smoother controls. All quests and the entire game feels less linear compared to Gothic 1, which is a huge plus in my book. You feel like you have a lot more freedom while playing the game, whether that's related to exploration itself or doing quests. When you progress through chapters, you get more dynamic events, which feels way more impactful compared to Gothic 1. Night of the Raven expansion included more content and a new questline related to a known character from Gothic 1, and you might find that very interesting after completing Gothic Remake. The combat pretty much works the same, but the build variety is a little bit better now. For example, your strength in Gothic 1 and Gothic Remake is your main stats for melee builds, while Gothic 2 allows you to create a dexterity melee builds as well. Some melee weapons require you to have a high dexterity stat if you want to use them, so you can basically become a dex melee fighter. But once again, dexterity increases your damage with ranged weapons, which is a very viable playstyle in Gothic 2. Gothic 2 is also a lot more challenging in general, especially with Night of the Raven expansion. If you get the gold edition of Gothic 2, Night of the Raven expansion is automatically installed on top of the base game. If for whatever reason you don't want to play with the expansion, you can use the beta branch on Steam and experience the original game without the expansion. I personally do not recommend doing this because I think Night of the Raven is an amazing addition to the base game, but some OG fans will disagree. Overall, playing Gothic 2 after you finish Gothic 1 Remake is a no-brainer, really. Especially today, when you can get this game on pretty much all platforms. Well, almost. Gothic 2 Classic will come out on PlayStation and Xbox consoles very soon, but it's already on Nintendo Switch and PC of course. If you can't wait for Gothic 2 Remake, which is bound to happen at this point, you should definitely give the original a chance. And those will be 3 RPGs you should play after you beat Gothic Remake.
Thanks, man. You just made my day.
Tell me your opinion about this topic, and would you maybe recommend other games to new fans of Gothic? Leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more content like this. And if you want to go a step further, consider supporting your boy by becoming a YouTube channel member or a Patreon. Huge thanks to all my current supporters, and I'll see ya in the next one.